lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
It began as a whisper. A low whisper echoed through the magnificent corridors of Buckingham Palace, powerful enough to send shockwaves throughout the royal family. King Charles III, ailing and increasingly absent from public life, had taken a private decision. Not just any decision, a choice that could change the monarchy forever. In a land where tradition guides every royal breath and silence speaks more than words, Charles defied the unsaid laws that have guided rulers for years. According to palace sources, the king personally named Prince William as his successor while still alive and on the throne, not just in theory or in line of succession, but also in intention, action, and preparation. This was not a hazy reference to the future. This was a formal recognition, whispered at first and then confirmed by those closest to the inner circle. Charles had selected his son, and he wanted the world to know, even if it wasn't meant to hear it right now. But, as with all royal secrets, the truth does not remain hidden for long. The transition started quietly. Royal aides were reassigned. William, senior officials, and military commanders began to meet privately more frequently. Princess Anne was reportedly seen leaving Clarence House late at night. What about Queen Camilla? She was nowhere to be found. Her absence said more than any public statement could. Those closest to her said she was absolutely livid. Her reaction, which was initially muted before becoming explosive, verified what many had suspected. This was not a formal gesture. It was a power maneuver, a shift in royal destiny. Camilla was not part of the new strategy. For decades, she had worked for acceptance, working her way from mistress to consort, from the shadows to the crown's golden light. But now, with a single decision, Charles had called her hopes into question. He had not died, but in many respects, he had stepped back, and in his place stepped William, Diana's son, and the king whom the populace had already welcomed in their hearts. The whispers had developed into full-throated murmurs. Something seismic had occurred within the palace walls. And when the news began to break, one fact became impossible to ignore. The throne was no longer reserved for William. It was already taking shape around him. And how did Camilla react? Well, it said everything. The decision was not taken in a large chamber or in front of the entire parliament. There was no fanfare, ceremonial gesture, or coronation bells. Instead, it took place in a special room at Sandringham, which was silent and almost hallowed, with only a few of the most trusted royals present. It was here that King Charles III, gray-faced and exhausted from weeks of illness, broke centuries of royal convention by naming Prince William not only as heir, but as his chosen successor in spirit and structure, effective immediately. According to individuals close to the royal family, Charles' condition has deteriorated in recent months. Though palace officials strove to maintain appearances, his absences grew more difficult to explain. There are less public engagements, meetings are shorter, audiences had been canceled. What about behind the scenes? Rumors circulated of chronic weariness, memory problems, and an urgent need to put things in order. So on a rainy Thursday afternoon, as clouds collected over Norfolk, the king summoned a select group: Princess Anne, Prince Edward, Queen Camilla, and Prince William. The room was filled with tension. There is no staff. There are no cameras, just family and the crown. Charles, ever the stoic, reportedly began by acknowledging the monarchy's vulnerability. The institution is not what it once was, he stated quietly but firmly, and if it is to survive, it must change. Now, he then turned to William. There was no dramatic halt or hesitation, just a clear and purposeful statement. It is time. The people already regard you as their monarch. I'd like to make it official. My decision, while I still can. Gasps and quiet. Even Anne was allegedly taken aback. This wasn't an abdication in the legal sense, but it was almost as powerful. A voluntary transfer of authority. Clarity, rather than death, enforces the shift. One witness described William as noticeably scared. He had prepared for this his entire life, but not in this manner. Not while his father is still alive. Not while the monarchy was perilously close to collapse. But Charles wasn't done. He motioned to a sealed envelope containing his personal letter of intent. Not a will, but a wish. a proclamation that, if he becomes incompetent or unable to rule in full capacity, William will be accorded all informal powers of a reigning king, along with rapid preparations for complete succession. This altered the regular order of passive inheritance. It was a deliberate endorsement, a public-facing change cloaked in private formality. Then came the shock. Camilla stood from her seat as William received the envelope. Her hands trembled. She apparently looked at Charles in amazement before saying a single sentence. "So after all this, I am nothing?" The room froze. Even Anne, known for her unflappable demeanor, looked down. Charles did not respond right away. Instead, he gave Camilla a glance that could not be expressed in words. This was not personal. It was preservation. The monarchy, which was already weak, required a future that the public could trust, and that future did not include her. William attempted to speak, to soothe, to acknowledge the difficulty, but Camilla merely turned and walked away. She did not cry. She did not shout. However, one aide later described her stillness as a storm louder than thunder, and just like that, the decision was decided, not through Parliament, not with pomp, but through a dying king's final clarity and a son's hesitant acceptance of fate. In a single conversation, Charles accomplished what many kings had feared. He gave up power before his death. He did not wait for the crown to fall into William's lap. He put it there by choice. Within the royal gates, a new order had already begun, even though the papers did not publish it for days and official titles did not change. William wasn't the next in line anymore. He was the next in command. Camilla had struggled for everything she owned. For decades, she fought her way from the gloom of scandal to the glittering seat beside a king. She faced a nation's anger, the chilly stares of palace courtiers, and the lingering ghost of Diana, a lady the world had never stopped adoring. She had overcome every adversity with one purpose in mind: to stand tall as queen. But on that tranquil afternoon at Sandringham, everything came crumbling down. Camilla's reaction, according to royal sources, was immediate and intense. Following King Charles' decision, she left the room without saying anything and secluded herself in a separate section of the estate. Aides reported hearing tears echoing throughout the halls. One footman later described her as not angry at first, but devastated, like someone watching her entire identity unravel. She had waited her entire life to be acknowledged, to have her position legitimized not only by title, but also by authority. And now, that authority had been freely given over to a woman she had long seen as a mortal rival. Diana's son, accompanied by Diana's wife. "It's a betrayal," she was heard saying. "He vowed that I'd be with him to the end, that I would be a part of the future." But Camilla received a clear message. She would have no future at the center of power. In private, she raged, not just at Charles, but also at Anne, who had remained silent while the king's plan became evident. Camilla thought she had sympathizers within the firm, but they were all quiet at the time. Even Edward did not reach out to calm her, and Prince Harry, her most effective indirect weapon in royal warfare, was hundreds of miles away. Camilla declined to appear in public for several days. Royal engagements were postponed. The palace issued ambiguous remarks about her resting, but behind the scenes, the focus was on damage management. One of her senior advisors apparently attempted to contact Charles to seek clarification, only to be met with a chilly response from a senior courtier. "The king has spoken." Then came the comparisons. The headlines didn't explicitly mention her name, but they didn't have to. Diana's son steps in as king in waiting. A future led by William and Kate. The crown returns to the people's line. Camilla knew precisely what they meant. She was being eliminated again. What wounded even more was Charles's failure to consult her before making the choice. Not even a private warning. For a lady who had given so much, this was more than just a political setback. It was personal. "He didn't trust me," she reportedly told one confidant. "He never fully did." Camilla briefly pondered abandoning her royal duties. According to insiders, she even threatened to leave London and go permanently to Ray Mill House, her own estate. However, the crown has a way of trapping people within its orbit. In the days that followed, she reappeared, smiling, poised, the consummate professional. But, according to those close to her, there was a woman behind the eyes who had changed, not broken, but damaged in the most important place, her pride. Because this time the betrayal did not come from the media, alternatively, the public, or Diana's spirit. It came from the man she adored. That was the deepest cut Camilla ever received. While Camilla's life unraveled behind closed doors, Prince William remained composed, focused, and quiet. No declarations, no grandiose speeches, just a strong, wordless acceptance of the job he'd been training for since birth. But make no mistake, this was his moment. Insiders close to the palace reported a marked change in William almost immediately after Charles's private support, a calm intensity. Meetings that were formerly ceremonial in nature now carried more weight. Discussions with the Prime Minister's office, intelligence briefings, and private meetings with foreign ambassadors began to go via William first. The crown had not officially changed hands, but power had begun to flow in a new direction. And William? He did not desire the attention. He never had. Unlike his brother Harry, who burnt bridges on his way out, William had spent years winning the nation's trust by doing the work, exercising moderation, and prioritizing country over turmoil. Now, when his father moved aside from the throne's great load, William stepped forward, not with fanfare, but with responsibility on his mind. One assistant described him as decisive, respectful, but no longer hesitant. The quiet young lad who once walked behind Diana's coffin had matured into a statesman, shaped by grief and led by tradition. When questioned privately by a close advisor if he was prepared for what followed next, William gave a simple but illuminating response. "My obligation is to the people. That's what my mum taught me. That is what I will honor." It was not only a statement of intent, but also of inheritance, not the type inscribed in wills or royal decrees, but the kind passed down from mother to son through generations of example. Diana had prepared him for this. She never lived to see it, but now the rest of the world will. Catherine, William's faithful partner, was standing behind him. According to sources, she played a subtle but crucial role in the transfer, advising William to proceed cautiously in order to prevent the appearance of a power grab. "Let them come to you," she reportedly stated. "Allow the people to ask for your crown. Do not reach for it." And she was correct. People were inquiring. Polls revealed a surge in public support for William's leadership, with many Britons relieved that the next chapter of the monarchy will be defined by continuity and class rather than controversy or internal split. Social media was awash with analogies to his mother, Diana's son, at last stepping into the light. Even inside the palace, longtime courtiers who had previously served the Queen were observed nodding in quiet agreement. "There's a strength in William," one person said. "He does not need to shout. He only leads." Nonetheless, William remained wary. He recognized Charles's decision had great symbolic value, but the monarchy's legal weight remained unchanged for the time being. Any premature movements risked disrupting the firm's delicate peace, so he moved precisely, allowing the world to adjust as he prepared to govern. But don't make any mistakes. This was an increase, not a weight. The crown may still have rested on Charles's head in public, but behind the palace walls and in the hearts of the people, it was already William's responsibility. And unlike many before him, he did not wear it for power. He wore it on purpose. Despite the fact that she has been gone for nearly 2 decades, Princess Diana's presence in the royal family and the public imagination has never faded. Her shadow still hangs over Buckingham Palace like a faint but obvious light. And today, with the calm ascension of her eldest son, that light is shining brightly than ever. As Prince William stepped into his father's shoes, murmurs in palace halls all repeated the same truth. Diana's legacy had returned to the center of the monarchy, not as a ghost from the past, but as a template for the future. It wasn't a coincidence. Charles's choice to choose William as his successor was both political and emotional. It was a full-circle event, steeped in sadness, remorse, and atonement. For many in Britain, it felt like the crown was finally returning to the hands of the woman who had never been permitted to wear it. "Diana should have been queen," said a former royal servant. Everybody knew it. In a way, she finally is. Through William was labeled as the heir with his mother's heart from birth. But as he grew older, the analogy took on a deeper meaning. He embraced her empathy, intuition, and defiance of royal rigidity. He didn't only resemble her, he reflected her values, and that was just what the public had hoped for. For years, royal observers have argued that the monarchy requires a new type of leader, one who can walk among the people without armored cars or ivory towers, who can feel deeply and act decisively. That was Diana's present, and now it was William's. However, Diana's legacy caused tension within the palace, notably with Camilla. Every stride William took towards the throne was a departure from the legacy Camilla hoped to establish with Charles. In private, she once described the continuous comparison to Diana as an anchor around the future. But in public, that anchor was the very thing holding the monarchy afloat. Diana's flame was not only borne by William, Catherine too was an important part of that tradition. Kate Middleton, Diana's spiritual daughter-in-law, was regarded as elegant, loving, and emotionally sophisticated for many years. She did not attempt to replace her, but she did honor her memory with grace. Catherine gently incorporated Diana's influence into everything she did, whether it was wearing her sapphire ring, visiting children's hospitals, or choosing causes dear to Diana's heart. There was controversy when Camilla received the title of Queen Consort, but now, as William's star climbed, there was a swelling chorus proclaiming Catherine the true Queen of Hearts, a term hitherto held only for Diana. The symbolism grew too intense to ignore. The press coverage, public surveys, and whispers from palace aides all confirmed Diana's return, not in person, but on purpose. Her values were shaping the next generation of monarchs, and her son was establishing a reign based on those values. For many in Britain, this was more than merely poetic. It was justice, a restoration, not of a woman, but of what she represented. And in the solitude of the palace halls, where gilded pictures line the walls and tradition whispers from the tapestries, one truth resonates louder than ever. The crown may have moved on, but it never forgets her. The reaction in the United Kingdom and around the world to King Charles selecting Prince William as his direct successor was nothing short of seismic. Not because it was startling, but because it was exactly what millions of people had hoped for all along. People have secretly fantasized this day when William first appeared in public alongside his late mother. Now that Charles's private decision had leaked to the public, it appeared that the monarchy was finally listening to the people. "It should have always been William," said one viral tweet, which received more than 500,000 likes in less than a day. That attitude was shared on morning talk shows, radio call-ins, and social media platforms, where hashtags such as #KingWilliam and #Diana's Legacy trended for days. For many, this was about more than just formality and the royal line of succession. It was about trust. It was about character. It was about a prince who walked among the people in humility while grieving the loss of his mother in front of the world. Following the news, polls published by The Times and YouGov revealed a stunning 82% support for William becoming king sooner rather than later. In contrast, Charles's already weak support fell even further, particularly among younger generations who regard William and Catherine as a modern royal couple capable of linking the past and the future. One woman interviewed outside Kensington Palace stated, "I adored the Queen, but after her, Diana was the only person who ever made me feel something genuine. William possesses the same energy. You look at him and think, he gets it, he understands us." Ordinary people argued the move in pubs, universities, and even at bus stops across the country. Even among die-hard monarchists who earlier championed tradition, a new term began coming up. "This just feels right." Of course, not everybody celebrated. Some thought the timing was inconsiderate. Others questioned what this meant for the constitutional monarchy and whether Charles was discreetly stepping down rather than openly abdicating. Even such concerns were overshadowed by the outpouring of support for William. And it wasn't limited to Britain. Across the Commonwealth, particularly in Canada and Australia, where royal relevance has eroded in recent decades, support for the monarchy increased unexpectedly following the revelation. Commentators noticed that William and Catherine's global image, elegant, modern, and uncontroversial, rekindled international interest in the royal institution. Inside the United Kingdom, the message was louder and more emotive. People were tired of scandals. I'm tired of internal royal feuds, Netflix interviews, royal rebels, and backdoor briefings. They wanted dignity, duty, stability, and in William, they saw all three. Meanwhile, news outlets began to review Princess Diana's life narrative, viewing it as a prophecy rather than a tragedy. Columnists presented William's rise as a realization of her vision, a monarchy founded on humanism, service, and accessibility. Camilla's name was barely referenced during this cultural reawakening. Her silence spoke volumes. While William was accepted as the future, Camilla's story appeared to be slowly fading, as if the nation had opted to turn the page without her. In the end, it wasn't just a succession plan. It represented a national emotional reset, a choice. The people picked William. Not because they had to, but in their hearts he had been their king for many years. The royal family has endured wars, abdications, divorces, and death. But what happened behind palace doors with Charles's private decision to name Prince William his successor was more than simply another chapter. It marked the end of a book, an era characterized by internal strife, public distrust, and contentious relationships had come to an end. In its place, a new one had started, not with fanfare, not with ceremony, but with a murmur that resonated louder than any coronation bell. It's William's time. For years, the monarchy has been accused of adhering to outmoded practices and losing touch with the people it is supposed to serve. However, this calm readjustment felt different. It wasn't just about the blood. It was about values. It was about trust. And it was about legacy. King Charles, a man frequently torn between love and duty, finally took a decision that, in the eyes of the people, appeared redemptive. He did more than merely designate a successor when he passed the torch early. He made peace with the past, and Diana's spirit shone brightly in that torch. Prince William has long been known as the People's Prince, not because he demanded it, but because he deserved it. He maintained his composure, kindness, and a life under examination, accessible, human. Now, as he quietly prepares to lead, he carries more than just the crown. He represents a nation's hopes, a mother's legacy, a promise of dignity restored. Meanwhile, the palace has altered. The power dynamic that formerly centered on Charles and Camilla has shifted. Camilla's voice has faded to the background. William's has risen in weight rather than volume. As a result, the House of Windsor resumes operations, not with controversy, not with spectacles, but now a boy is stepping into the shadow of a mother who was never crowned but always ruled hearts. The page has turned. The crown has been rewritten. The future of the monarchy has a new name, King William.